This is Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley, a podcast that explores the feelings, emotions, and experiences of what it means to be human in this world. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references if you need support.
And before you dive in, please like, subscribe, comment, share with anyone you think might also connect with today's session. Our goal is to reach as many people as possible, and we are endlessly grateful for your continued support. So, let's get to it. Woo! Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley. I am Ashley.
I am Sara Cate.
We are, after the last few weeks, it's been a little heavy. We talked about the trauma that we experienced from our caregivers in our immediate connection when we're like growing up, like our immediate household. And the week prior to that, we talked about ancestral and generational trauma, and how that's passed down. And so we want to offer a little bit more insight into how we can help ourselves. And so we're going to talk about self-soothing and self-care and some misconceptions. And our Sara Cate and I, we're really on the same page when it comes to that.
We are.
Um,
It's really great to have that with somebody. I don't know if you've experienced that in the world, but to just click, right? To like have things make sense without having to explain them.
Yeah.
It's really lovely.
Yeah. You know, it was like just, well, I don't know, 4 minutes ago, we were talking about, okay, today we're going to talk about self-soothing, but like, what does that mean to you? Like, what is that? What is that? And Sara Cate was like, this is what I want to say. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Yep. That's it. And so it is, it's just nice to have, you know, I think that it is always good to challenge our beliefs and to talk to people who believe differently than you. But it's also really nice when you can connect with somebody and have conversations about some things that, like we've said many times on this podcast, people just don't talk about these things a lot. And maybe in the way that we talk about them. And so it's just really nice to have somebody who believes in the same way of treating your body. And so we're here to offer some of that support.
Yeah. And not only is it going to be a conversation, you know, that Ashley and I about kind of what we are, our lens, our perspective of what self-care is, what self-soothing is. And it's going to be practices, right? Today, like today, you're going to walk away with something, some tangible action that you can take in those moments. So it's going to kind of be a little bit of a conversation around all of this, to maybe help reframe or reorganize the way that you view self-care, self-soothing, those kinds of things, how we just care for ourselves. And then hopefully some techniques that really support you in a moment when you might need a little extra care.
So maybe take a sec to just kind of think about, like, what does self-soothing even mean to you? What does self-care mean to you? What have you been told that self-care is? Because I think what you're going to hear from us, which again shouldn't come as a surprise, hopefully by now, is that we're going to talk a lot about like care and compassion and helping yourself, not just pretending things aren't there. So is that where we should start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's
Let's begin.
Let us begin. Yeah. So I think something that I come up against a lot in my work is the common misconception that my role as a therapist is to take away all of the things that ail you. It's to get rid of the anxiety. It's to get rid of the anger. It's to get rid of the fear. It's to get rid of the doubt, the depression, whatever it is. And while that is a desirable goal for a lot of us, the reality of being able to just completely, utterly remove those things from our lived experience it's pretty difficult. you know, I've said this a million times before, but my role as a therapist is to really help my clients, and in my own personal work, it's the same, is to get more comfortable and more able to be with my discomfort, to sit with the things that are really difficult for me to sit with. And that is actually my kind of lens of what self-soothing means, and what I kind of think self-care means. Like, if we take care of ourselves in a moment, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
It just, or that it goes completely away. Maybe it does sometimes, right? And for the majority of us, just because we take a bath, or because we go for that walk, or because we call that friend, that whole discomfort that we were swimming in might not be 100% gone. It might be 50% gone. It might be 20% gone. But that's more what we're looking to do, is create that care for ourselves when something is really difficult to navigate, that support for ourselves when we're having a really hard time, rather than the goal or the mission, because to some degree that's going to gaslight ourselves of like, oh, well, if I do all of these things, I'm supposed to feel better. Well, if you don't, then what story are you going to create in your head about how you did it wrong, how you're not doing it enough, how it's not, you don't care enough about yourself, whatever that, you know, shame rhetoric might be. If all of a sudden you don't feel completely well and happy and joyful in amidst something really, really difficult.
I was thinking as she was talking about how, you know, people come to her and they want, you know, Sara Cate, I kind of wanted you to just take my anxiety away.
I mean, I want my therapist to do the same. And I've had to check myself on that a lot, where I'm like, I'm going into this session thinking she'll wave a wand and I'm going to feel better.
Yeah. And it's, you know, again, we're coming from like two lines of work, but also the same. And when people come to see me and they want me to just fix their physical body, I really have a hard time. Like, I really struggle with that, because I can't, you know, like I think that this is something that it's just ingrained in us that a doctor is going to know what to do. And yes, we have professionals in certain areas and experts in certain areas for a reason. Like, we need that knowledge. We need somebody to be so ingrained with how the stomach works that if something is really going on, we can go to them, right? Same thing with any part of our physical, emotional, mental health, right? Like, we need people who specialize in this. However, if we are going to claim our birthright of having agency over our body, we have to understand that nobody is the expert of our body other than us. The people in the medical field, somebody like myself who's going to help you along your journey to feeling more comfortable in your body, or help you understand why your body is doing certain things, or why your anxieties are showing up and presenting, and like how you can take care of yourself through those things. We're there as tools to help you. But ultimately, this is your journey of empowering yourself to learn how to care for all of it, for all of you. Because it's like, you know, in my personal journey, right? Like, I have been open about like struggling with anxiety, and I used to really just like not even want to talk about that part of myself, or like pretend that it wasn't there, or be like, I should be over this by now, or this shouldn't bother me by now, right?
Or I should know how to manage this.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
I should know how to deal with this.
Right.
When we've been given no tools,
right?
To deal with it.
It's all the shoulds, right?
Yeah.
It's all the shoulds. And so I would carry that, but like, that's not helpful. That's not helpful for me to learn how to love myself. That's not helpful for me to learn how to care for myself. And it also doesn't mean that is the only thing that defines me, you know? So I don't know what I'm trying to say here, other
Welcome to our podcast where we just
other than I just, like this is what I do. I help people feel
Yeah.
comfortable in their body. I help them learn how to love their body and take care of their body in all of the ways.
Right.
And my hope for everybody is that that they get to a place where they know what agency over themselves is. And part of that is knowing how to take care of all of it,
Right.
not just the joy.
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about, Ashley, when you say agency, and we did a podcast in season 1 about what it means to have agency over your own body. And when you're saying like, yes, the medical field, therapists, doctors, attorneys, whoever you go to, you're the guy, the people who change your oil, like everyone has a specialty that might be outside of our wheelhouse, but it doesn't mean that we in that moment don't have a voice, a say, an ability to take that in, choice to take that information in and go, does that feel right? Do I actually need all of those additional things? Does that plan of action actually feel right to me? Do I want a second opinion? Like, do I want to go somewhere else and ask somebody else before and then like take all of that information in and say, what do I feel? What do I notice? And that's for so many of us, the breakdown. It's the fact that we haven't been able to sit with these things inside of ourselves enough to know how they are guiding us. And we've never been able to sit with our discomfort enough to know and to trust it, to be like, no, this isn't the thing I want to pursue. This isn't the person I want to be with. This doesn't feel like the right job opportunity for me. Right. But that sometimes comes out of the discomfort. That sometimes comes out of that sick feeling in your stomach, or like if you get supercharged when you're thinking about that job or thinking about that person and you're like, I don't feel settled in my body. That discomfort actually has information. And if we can learn to soothe and care for ourselves in that moment and not shut it down and not get rid of it, there is possibility for a ton of wisdom that comes from our body that then gives us the ability to have agency and make those choices in those moments to say, I'm not going to go in that direction. I need a second opinion. I don't want to try that just yet. This isn't for me right now. Right. And that might feel shitty. That might feel really gross to be like, man, this isn't for me right now. And I want it. And it's not for me right now. And there's disappointment in that. There's sadness in that. There's frustration in that. Right. Yeah. So like, that's why, for me, changing the self-care, self-soothing narrative from like taking something away, right? Like I gave Ashley the example of like, you have a cut on your leg, you put some triple antibiotic ointment on it and a Band-Aid on it, and you're careful with it. That is how you care for something that is disrupted. You don't wave a wand. I mean, in Harry Potter they do, but
I've never seen that.
I know. Don't remind me on air.
I forgot that we've talked
about this before.
Yeah, we have.
I'm not going taking a left here, even though I want to. But like we can't wave a wand and the cut be gone. We have to gently take care of it, and it still hurts, and it's still painful, and it's still something that's there that we have to be mindful of. And yet we're caring for it. We're trying to soothe it. And so taking care of our emotional world is very, very similar. And I even think about Ashley's field, right? Like with PT. I mean, when I started going to Ashley, the pain that her teeny little fingers could pull out of my body, right through pain, she would work on, I have a trigger point in my right scapula, and Ashley would work on it. And it took a lot of sessions where I had to just really just focus on my breath and receive her care and listen to her soothing voice while I would breathe through those moments to make me better.
Can I expand more on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Because this is where I think it's cool, because we can't separate the physical and the mind and the spirit and the soul. We can't. And if you're trying, you're gonna end up hitting a wall. Sooner or later. And so us working on this point in her shoulder, I would wait for the invitation of her tissue to like tell me that like, okay, we're going to go a little bit deeper, or I'm going to shift and go this way instead. And what happens as I've like spoke a lot on this podcast about like how like moving the physical body can be an in to releasing some of the other stuff. And some of the things that Sara Cate would do is like cough. Well, she would be like, "Oh, what are you doing?"
The sounds that came out of my body were probably alarming for other people in that office. It is automatic. Like she would, she's a miracle worker.
But well,
magic hands, teeny fingers, magic hands. I don't know how there's so much power in her sweet little fingies.
Child size.
I mean, child size. But could take me down in one little poke. It's really true. Magnificent.
But it was really because, you know, there were some things that happened in Sara Cate's life that caused an emotional response as I was treating her, right? And so she comes in as her whole body. She comes in and I'm not just saying like, okay, like lay over or turn over, I'm gonna like just kill you, right? Like that's not my intention. However, being a witness to somebody as they're in their healing process, and I'm using, right, like I'm using my hands, I'm helping to manipulate her tissue to help her release those other things, right? And there would be emotional releases.
Oh, big time.
And coughing. So like, we don't have to get into all of this, but like where I was working was right over her lung field, and grief is a huge thing that's carried in our lung field. And there can be coughing and there can be things like that. Anyways, but watching somebody move through that process is, I'm always so like grateful and thankful that that is even something that I get to witness, because I think, are you gonna cry?
Yeah,
you can cry.
I know.
I'm not sure what episode of season this is, but we haven't cried yet, and I think
here we go. Because what you're speaking to actually is the magic of what we can find in support, right? And like, yes, it has to come through this like movement and like care for our bodies in a different way. And like, it was physical therapy because I was in pain, and the way that she manipulated the tissue and like there was some pain in that, you know, and I, like I said, I had to breathe through it, but it was actually care, you know, and that sometimes it looks like that.
And there's a difference in a tissue where the body in front of me has to do a little pushing back against it, right? Like there's a difference between like a fight through and this is like injury and we need to like
back up.
Yeah. You know? And that is the thing that like truly I like say this all the time. There are many things about the PT world that I don't agree with, but I am forever in awe that like that's the path that took me to be here right now, and like I had to go through that to like do all of the other things. But the fact that I can help somebody and be witness to them figuring out what their body needs, and at the times where they need to be a fighter to fight for themselves. That's what I mean when I say like fight or like fight through something. They're fighting for themselves. They're fighting for the belief that they have in themselves that they can feel differently. And as a practitioner, it's like forever will be probably the most inspiring and my favorite thing. And so like watching her go through that also then as like a friend is just like, you know, then you kind of want to be like a cheerleader and be like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, make that noise again.
But the power of support.
Yes.
And when we think about self-care, the billion-dollar industry of self-care, it's typically things that are done alone. It is the glass of wine by yourself in the bathtub. It's the go get a massage. It's the lay down on the couch and watch a movie, which are not bad things. They often bring us comfort. They can bring us comfort. But it also can bring some bypassing, and it can bring some, it maybe doesn't give justice to the care that our
Mm.
body, when I say body, I always mean like mind, body, spirit, like our whole presence. It doesn't give justice to what it deserves.
Mm.
And we wouldn't treat somebody else like that, right? Like if there was your 4-year-old daughter, niece, or whoever who came up to you and was really upset about something, you wouldn't say, well, here, let me just sit you in the bath, spend some time alone.
Yeah.
Like
Isolation.
here's your juice.
Isolation might not be
Yeah.
a tool.
Right. And so right, because again, we're speaking to this like truly multi-billion-dollar industry that tells us what self-care has to be. And I'm not like, I enjoy a bath and a glass of wine. Absolutely. And I also understand that my system is worthy of care and compassion that leads me down the road of being able in those moments where something is really wrong to understand that I didn't fail because I can't make myself better like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
like,
right. Like those
yeah.
things aren't just the quick fix.
Right.
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 And like to Ashley's point, she didn't fail because taking the bath didn't make her feel all of a sudden 100%.
Right.
And so I think, again, coming back to the conversation of recognizing that when we are taking care of ourselves, it's going to look probably different minute to minute. It could look different day to day.
Mhm.
You know, maybe one day you need to be active and one day you need to take a nap.
Mhm.
You know, one day you need to be around people. One day you do need
Mhm.
no sensory input. You need to just
Yeah.
be alone and be with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm starting with a new client, and they were sharing, you know, their journey with me, and they were just kind of like, I kind of want to go into this situation and just like kind of be numb. And I was like, I just have to be honest with you that, and they were going into like this really difficult couple session. And I was like, I understand that. I respect how your system needs to cope in this moment with that. And I'm just going to be open and honest with you that a lot of the work that you and I do is to help you go into that session and be able to be present for the pain. It is not to be able to go in and just enjoy the difficulty of the conversation that you're going to have with your partner, with your couples therapist, but it is going to be able to say, this is really painful. And I might need to get up and walk around while we have this conversation because I can't sit still and receive it all. It's too hard. Right. And that's advocating, that's agency. It doesn't mean that you're not there for the difficult conversation. It isn't that, but that is you soothing in that moment. That is you taking care of your system in that moment, because ultimately what we're dealing with in that moment is the fight flight response, right? Like this information is too overwhelming for me to take in. So my body wants to do something else. I want to get out. Right. So being, as Ashley was saying, being able to use movement in that moment to soothe and care for your system. If something you're receiving is really hard, I don't know about you, but for me, when I'm having a difficult conversation, or let's say maybe I'm talking to some parents, I work with some teens and some adolescents, and I have to have really hard conversations with the parents around their child's care. And I will walk through my house outside when I have those conversations, because it keeps me somewhat regulated to have what is a very difficult conversation most of the time. And it doesn't mean I don't have the conversation. It doesn't mean that I don't sometimes want to feel my avoidance come in, feel my hesitation come in. And I'm just like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I'm feeling that avoidance. I'm feeling that resistance to this. I'm going to move. I'm going to start my walk, and then I'm going to make the call, and then I'll have the call while I'm walking, and then I'll come back and I'll orient to my space, right? Like these are things that I've had to put into my own practices to do the work that I do. And so I think it's just remembering, like, this isn't to erase or diminish or negate what you're feeling, because what you're feeling, acknowledging it creates agency. It creates you start to voice your needs when you actually acknowledge that you feel something. And that's soothing. That's care.
You start to voice your needs when you, what did you say? Actually, it's on the recording. You start to voice your needs when you actually acknowledge that you feel something.
Yes.
What? That's so good. That should,
There's the,
it's over. The podcast is over. That's all we needed to hear.
great.
Literally.
I love you.
That was amazing.
Okay. But
It was.
I'm trying to, that's very nice.
Receive it.
I know.
No, but that's
my jaw got
that's
tight when you said that.
But that was really profound.
But because it's, you know, I'm just so passionate about this because
Yeah.
we live so much of our lives suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
We shut our emotions down, we shut our feelings down, we shut our sensations down. And so then we're these adults running around
Mm-hmm.
thinking that we know what we need. And and that's also a part of the self-care industry. Know what you need, you know, advocate, voice it. But there's no conversation to be honest about the fact that like sometimes we feel like shit a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we feel frustrated, we feel uncomfortable, we feel scared a lot of the time.
Yeah. The whole like voice what you need, say what you need. Oh, I'm trying not to go to you because well, here we go.
Here we go.
Well, I could talk about this for hours because I work with a lot of people who are trying to have a healthier sexual relationship in general, which starts with themselves, of course, right? But there is a huge, and I've mentioned this before that like, yeah, I am so happy to hear that female pleasure is starting to be talked about. That is a really incredible thing that is starting to happen. However, what's happening though is there is now even more shame placed on the people who have these parts, the people who don't have a penis. There's shame placed on them because now they're automatically supposed to know what they want, what feels good to them, when they've never even been taught, one, their anatomy to like understand what is even like happening, right? They don't even know the parts of their body. But now we're putting them in a situation where they're supposed to voice what they want and need. We don't give them the process to figure that out. And then they say these things and they don't have any like groundwork or a base to work off of safety within themselves. And so,
no access to it.
Yeah. And so it's not making anything better.
Yeah.
It's just creating more problem. We're like the solution to all of this is just to like recognize that like people who don't have a penis deserve to know about their body from the time that they're born. And then we wouldn't have to deal with any of this because we would be in touch with ourselves from the beginning, because that is often, I'm not saying always, but that is often what happens for somebody with a penis, is their anatomy is very well known. People know by the age of 8 how to pleasure a penis, which is like, that should blow all of our minds, right? But that's what it's been centered around. And so I'm getting off topic and I'll stop.
But it's in the thread, right? Like it's in the thread of not knowing because there has been no permission or education or information just given to like, hey, you get to feel, you know, you have more than 5 emotions and here's what it might be like for you to feel them.
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't know what it feels like to feel your discomfort. Maybe you don't know what it feels like to feel your pleasure.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know what it feels like to feel your anger, right? I work a ton with like latent anger and suppressed anger. So like there's so much that we don't know about our internal worlds, yet we're kind of inundated with this message of like, express your needs, name your needs. And that can bring in shame.
Totally. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to express my needs. I'm going to give all these demands. And then if you can't meet them, then like something's wrong with you or you're a terrible person. And I can't just like make willy-nilly demands if I don't know where they're coming from. If I don't know why, if I don't know what it feels like to have this care and compassion for myself, because sometimes what can happen is then we are putting that burden to give the care and compassion to us instead of doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Sara Cate has, one of my favorite things, some breath work. We're going to talk about a specific kind of breath work to help, because we want to give you some tools also for this.
Sure.
So 2 things, we're going to talk about some breath work to help with this, and then some containment
Mhm.
and what that looks like. So which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the breath work. So this is a practice. Peter Levine created this. So if you've ever read the book Waking the Tiger, or I'm trying to think of his other ones, In an Unspoken Voice, Peter Levine created essentially somatic experiencing, the method, which is I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner. So this is something that we have learned. So I would recommend using this type of breath. It's called the VOO breath, VOO, Victor OO. That's just kind of a way to make the sound, but more so you want the really low baritone quality of the sound to be, Cedar wants to join in, my dog. But to help kind of move your nervous system from maybe like you went through something really triggering in the day, right? And you just feel like you can't ground back in. You can't find your way back to like this kind of restful, regulated state, maybe. So this would be used to kind of trigger what we call the rest and digest state of the body. So where your body can really settle and drop in. So it's not technically for when like you're having a panic attack, right? Like that's, we're already at a 10. This is more for when you just kind of are, maybe you've had a hard day and you're in the bath, or something's really activated you throughout your lived experience, and you're feeling just kind of like just consistently buzzy. This would be a great way to start a day, end a day. It's really helpful for digestion. So when we get kind of like stuck, sometimes our digestion shuts off. So this is a really great way to stimulate that. So I'm going to give you an example of it. You can do really as many rounds of this. I always recommend 5 to 10, somewhere in there. And you'll hear, I'm hoping the radio row will pick it up, but you'll hear me when I first start the sound, it's higher than I want it to be. And so you'll hear me be able to kind of drop it down lower. Because again, you want to feel that vibration all the way down into your lower belly. And sometimes I bring my hand to my lower abdomen just to kind of connect to it and see if I can move the sound. Sometimes it's helpful to have like a direction, an object that you're trying to connect the breath to, rather than kind of more the illusory imagination of the inside of you. So putting your hand on your lower abdomen can help. But it's just inhaling and then you exhale the VOO sound. And I'll probably do 3 rounds, 2 rounds, 3 rounds on here just to see if we can't get it. But it's super simple. You can do it anywhere. You just take a nice long inhale and you exhale VOO. So you just want to push it all the way down, that vibration nice and low. It helps kind of relax your jaw, which also helps the pelvic floor drop. So there's a lot of really strong benefits. I always kind of like notice a settling through my core. Because what it's doing is it's really working with your vagus nervous system, the polyvagal theory. If you've ever heard of Stephen Porges, I'll link all of that in here, and I'll link a clip to the VOO breath as well, so you have access to that. But that's a really, really easy way to kind of bring in the restfulness and kind of the almost like a slide down in after maybe being activated or triggered in your day.
You could hear Sara Cate like drop down in. So like you could rewind if you're curious, if you missed it the first time. You can hear her start and then like drop down in. This is she mentioned the connection to like pelvic floor. Your vocal cords and your pelvic floor are very similar in structure. And so that is part of the reason why this works, is because it's connecting, like she said, that whole vagal nerve system. But because of the design, like our bodies are so freaking cool, right?
Cool.
Like
Ashley and I could geek out.
I know. I'm gonna try not to be total anatomy geek right now, but I kind of want to be total anatomy geek. But they are designed very similarly, and like literally in my backpack right now, I have diagrams of them side by side. That's how important it is to like the work that I do, and moving through beyond like the anatomical presentation of what these two groups of muscles look like.
Yeah.
When you think about where our base, where our root chakra is, and where that like stability and safety comes from, is at the base of our pelvic floor. It's like at our tailbone, right? Like think about like the base of your pelvis. And that is where we want to get connection all the way that deep, because what we're essentially doing is providing ourselves a bigger base, a more stable base, more groundwork to move from forward into that. And so when you hear her drop, like, because I think people are like, whatever, I'm just gonna make this VU sound, right? But there's so much behind it. Both if you are an anatomy nerd, like Google the pelvic floor compared to the vocal cords and like
link those.
Yeah.
I think that if you're interested, we're gonna link all of this information. Because I think that'd be cool to see.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, it's wild. But anyways, so like when you're trying to get down into that, that's the importance of it, is because our body wants to work together. It wants to support you fully.
Yeah.
But again, like this isn't something that we have been taught. Like this isn't something like that when we're, 10, that we learn how to do to help ourselves. And just as another side, because I can't talk about this without saying this, but like if anybody listening is about to have a baby or wants to have a baby in the future, this is why the deep throated sounds are helpful during birth, because it relaxes up here, relaxes your vocal cords, relaxes your jaw. Same thing happens in your pelvic floor. And we are trying to get baby out, not keep baby in. And so this is just a really helpful tip for that. So if we like hold our breath and like, or like screech, right? It does the exact opposite. And so that's why this is really helpful. And if you want to help yourself in birth, like, here you go.
Reach out to Ashley.
Free.
But it is. And it's so like, and so if you find that you've had a really hard day, and like Ashley said a very important word at the beginning, and it was about compassion. And it's funny because when we say self-soothe or self-care, again, it doesn't mean that we can erase what happened in that hard day. But what it means is we could sit in the bathtub, we could sit in our warm bed, we could sit next to our partner and do a few rounds of VU breath to help try to create some care and some, like Ashley was saying, a wider ground, a wider base underneath you to land into, to say, here I am in my body, I'm in this space, I'm safe, right? But like, it doesn't mean that we're not going to get triggered or activated or have the anxiety or have that fear spiral during the day. And if we can find enough compassion to say, wow, I've had a really hard day, I've felt a lot of things, let me see if I can support myself in this way.
Amazing.
Another way to do that is if, like, I have a lot of clients who work with their dissociation. So if you find that you click out of your body, right? Like something's happening and you have that I'm an observer, or the outer body experience, or any of those things where it's just kind of like, I know this is happening, but I'm not really feeling it happen, right? This is kind of a way to help support bringing you back maybe a little bit more towards your system. Or if you're feeling really, like I call it chaotic or unbound, or you're feeling like energy is going everywhere all at once, this is a really useful strategy to support your body and feeling like, oh, wait, okay, I'm supported and I'm held. That's kind of the key word in this. So you would take your right hand and you would place it underneath your left arm. So right in your armpit. So if you can't see this, I'm essentially like cupping my armpit. My thumb is on the front side of my body and the rest of my fingers are on the back side of my body. And then I take my left arm and I just kind of drop my elbow down and I take my left hand and I wrap it around the outside of my right arm. So I'm holding myself in this kind of contained way. What you're doing is you're placing your right hand near your heart, right? So you're coming into a stronger connection in relationship to the rhythm of your own heartbeat. And then you can squeeze as tightly as you need to, and then just take slow breaths best you can. Inhaling, you'll feel the rise of your chest even more because it'll pull kind of your arms up towards the ceiling. And then as you exhale, you'll feel them kind of drop down more towards your stomach. And just taking a few rounds of breath, feeling really contained and supported here is a great way for your nervous system to go, oh, I'm all right. Right. Like we think about swaddling a baby, right? That's a new, not newer practice, but a practice of like containing their arms so they feel more like contained, like they were when they were in the womb space, that really safe container. We're doing the same thing for our nervous systems. Don't, regardless if we're 2 or with, an infant, or if we're 38, right? Like this can feel supportive at some point. If we're just feeling a little too unbound, feeling that self-contact can be a really, really soothing act for a really activated nervous system. So it's kind of the same idea. You could use a weighted, Ashley and I don't really love she and I just don't prefer weighted blankets, but a weighted blanket is a really great way to create some containment, holding something heavy in your hands, in your lap. Another great way to do that. Wrapping yourself in a blanket, same kind of idea, right? Like we're just trying to create a sense, but doing this exercise where you have your hands kind of holding your own container here, it's a really great way to feel kind of connection and presence with yourself. So there's a lot. There's a lot in this episode. But I think it's a really important episode.
I do too.
Because this is one that you could come back to after a lot of our other episodes and come back to this kind of clip and be like, okay, wow, that episode on generational trauma was really intense for me. I noticed I was a little bit activated after that. So I'm going to just do some of those VU breaths, or I'm going to just kind of like care for myself in a way to recognize, yeah, I'm having some stress, I'm having some anxiety, but I just need some additional support.
Yeah. So as always, we are here as resources for you all. We have a list of resources, but we could list a million of them. So we tried to make that list concise. So you may find what you need there, but if you feel like you need something else, that's what we're here for. So please reach out, share this information with anybody you think might also benefit, and just know that you're supported. And we are here to help you find compassion and exploration and help you just be a better friend to yourself. And until next time, take care. We will see ya later.